Well, hello everyone. I'm John Benson, and this is my presentation for COMS 680. Now, before I really get into the thick of things, I just want to ask you, let's say in the future, 10 years from now, how do you think our relationships will begin? I understand that on the surface, this seems like a rather silly question, but consider it for a moment. Have you ever met someone online without meeting them in person first? Also, do you know of any friends or family members who met their significant other on a dating website or on an application on their phone? The odds are the answer is probably yes. In fact, according to a recent study, approximately 39% of heterosexual couples reported meeting their significant other online. This number is up 22% from the same demographic in 2009. What's also significant about this is that the share of people who first met online and were previously strangers rose from 81% in 2009 to 90% in 2017. Now you may be asking yourself, okay, John, why does this matter? This is a big moment for you. You're trying to propose your research topic for your thesis and you're talking about online dating. I understand, but hear me out. If this current trend continues, then it's safe to say that in the next decade, a majority, if not all, of our relationships will start and be maintained online. Furthermore, by 2030, our ability to connect with other people may be solely dependent upon our technology, our communication networks, and the particular social networking sites or dating sites that one belongs to. At this point, there is so much that we don't understand about the digital landscape. How this will impact our levels of trust and intimacy, and how we can, achieve these things utilizing mediated communication. Now, what we've come to understand about face-to-face communication is courtesy of social penetration theory. But this may not give us the power to predict how people will react in online relationships in the digital landscape. In other words, as people become more entrenched in computer-mediated communication and social networking sites to start relationships, at this point in time, we still don't know exactly how people will behave. We also don't know if the level of trust and intimacy with online relationships will be greater than traditional face-to-face relationships. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I think it's worth having a quick refresher on social penetration theory. Often referred to as the onion theory, social penetration theory points to the layers of information disclosed between parties, contending that the growth of relationships relies on the skills of the individuals in revealing to each other their attitudes, personal characteristics, opinions, and feelings. The authors of social penetration theory were inspired by the economic proposition that human beings make decisions based on costs and rewards. This is an idea that still remains popular in the social psychological tradition even today. As social penetration theory approaches the relationship formation as a dynamic process, it is one in which relationships do go through those stages, from the most superficial and public to the intimate and personal. Now, what the authors of social penetration theory couldn't predict back in 1973 was how the internet, and the creation of it would impact how we all interact with each other. Now, the internet itself was officially revealed to the public in 1969, and back in the day it was known as ARPANET. And as internet technology continued to advance in the following decades, so too did the means of enabling people to communicate electronically. So this project that started out as a joint military project, as well as a project between a number of universities in the 70s and 80s, quickly turned into the next big thing in the 90s. And in a way, social penetration theory and the internet more or less co-evolved. The amount of research that was being done on face-to-face communication started to shift more and more towards computer-mediated communication. And more recently, the focus has been on the impact of social networking sites and the level of disclosure in relationships. This puts anyone in my particular situation at a great strategic advantage because there exist decades of published studies going as far back as the 1970s on social penetration theory, computer-mediated communication, and now research being done on social networking sites. As I mentioned earlier, even with this growing body of knowledge, the future of relationships, intimacy, and developing trust remains unpredictable. As one would assume that with readily accessible technology capable of reaching practically anyone on Earth, with a smartphone or just even a desktop, one would think that this would provide an environment where relationships are able to establish an extremely high level of trust. However, there are a number of studies that suggest the contrary. In fact, it appears that while social networking sites do allow for more interactions with fans and followers, this doesn't necessarily develop the same level of trust that one would have with traditional face-to-face friendships. So if the published studies that I've cited in my preliminary research remain valid, then a majority of social networking users have higher levels of trust with their friends, family, and other face-to-face relationships as opposed to their online friends. And as more and more of the world's population joins the online community, it becomes vitally important that we understand how we are all going to communicate. It's worth mentioning that at the time of this recording, the world is experiencing a pandemic. In the past few months, mankind went from normal life to quarantined life. Teleworking quickly became the new normal, and fears of coronavirus infection encouraged people to stay inside and fully embrace computer-mediated communication as a means of staying in touch with friends and family, as well as getting work done remotely. So are we on the cusp of another digital revolution? In the past few weeks, there's been a surge in virtual reality headset sales. As more and more of the world's population remain indoors, it seems as though we are all starting to embrace virtual reality, which could pretty much become the next level of human interaction. This is yet another reason why it's important to understand how our technology will impact disclosure in our future relationships. There are plenty of examples from human history where miscommunication led to tragic events, and now that the world is becoming a bit smaller with the help of our technology, we need to understand how to properly wield it. The Lord blessed us with free will and the ability to reason, and it's our responsibility to resist the temptation to lie, cheat, and steal online. As Ephesians 4:29 says, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers." For all these reasons, I strongly recommend that this area of interest be considered for my master's thesis with Liberty University. Thank you.